So good evening, everybody. Welcome to Thursday evening club officer training. I am so glad that you're joining us. We have had a fantastic week this week. I know that some people were surprised that we weren't doing the regular what to do if you're the club president, whatever training. There are loads of those trainings available. They're all online on the district website, on the YouTube channel. But what I really thought would be important for this series is for us to go a little bit beyond. And so we've had three amazing nights doing just other things that club officers need to know about, and tonight is no exception. We have one of the finest speakers and one of my personal mentors who's joining us this evening, and I'm so excited for us all to sit back and listen. So without further ado, it's my privilege and pleasure to share this virtual stage with none other than Mr. Alan Shaner, past international director. Alan, it's over to you.
All right, thank you, Mark. Good evening, everybody. I see a lot of faces that I know on here, but I do see a lot of new faces. So I want to start with a question. Who is a fairly new Toastmaster? Somebody that's been in Toastmasters, let's say less than 3 months. Just raise your hand. I'm not seeing anybody on page 1. Keep your hand up. Not seeing anybody on page 2. All right. Second thing I'd like to do, if you have questions, please send them to Mark by the chat. He will help me moderate this. What I'd like to start off with is, I'd like for all of you to think about when you were a visitor at the Toastmasters Club for the very first time, when you first learned about Toastmasters and went there. Do you remember what it was like for you? When you walk in this room, people are walking up to you and they're all saying hi to you and introducing themselves one after another. Well, there's one of you, so it's easy for them to remember your name, but it's not always so easy for you to remember everybody else's name. So how many here at their club that meets in person has name tags or table tents that they put? All right, I see quite a few hands going up. This is good. This is something that the visitor needs. And this is what we have to do, is put ourselves in their shoes. And that may be hard for some of us to do, especially those of us that have been in Toastmasters for quite some time, to try to put ourselves back in their shoes and realize what they're going through. Now, what I want to do tonight is, this is just more or less an open discussion. This is not going to be me talking all the time. As you have ideas, you can raise your hand. I'll let Mark call on who he wants to in the order, and we'll talk about what the new member experience is like. But that's one of the very first things we want to talk about. And we do cover this in Moments of Truth, which we can still use. And it's something that it's necessary. It's been a good reminder for me, because we do have a fairly new member in our club that asked me to be their mentor, and questions that you don't always think about. Why are things timed this way at one meeting, and why are they timed a different way at another meeting? And an example is, some of our meetings, we have evaluations are only 1 to 2 minutes, and at other meetings, our evaluations are 2 to 3 minutes. I'm talking for prepared speakers. And then our evaluations for our table topic speakers, we try to limit those to 30 seconds per person. So your evaluation is not actually longer than what they speak for. But sometimes the evaluations will go longer. And that's one of the things that will come up from a new member, is why are these evaluations not so critically timed? They also have questions about, what does the grammarian, Wordmaster grammarian, do? how do you become an evaluator? Who teaches you to be an evaluator? So these are all questions that the new member has, that along with a whole lot more. And I'd like to hear from some of you what some of the questions are posed to you from some of the newer members, especially those of you that are meeting in blended meetings, in other words, live and virtual, and those of you that are meeting virtual only. Do we have any questions or comments that we'd like to bring up?
Hey, Alan, I have got an interesting one in the chat box.
Okay.
People are saying they've never heard of table topics evaluations.
Oh, very good.
Mm-mm.
How do we become better if we're not evaluated? It's something that's very important. So every club I've ever belonged to, and I've been in Toastmasters now for more than 20 years, we evaluate table topics, because table topics is an exercise in impromptu speaking. And how are you going to improve unless you get one person's opinion on how you can be better at your impromptu speaking? And I'm going to call on somebody that's here tonight, somebody that I've worked with for many years, Lucy. I know you have helped me through the years with many projects, but I'd like to hear about your comments about evaluations of table topics.
Alan, I absolutely agree with you. Any chance to speak is an opportunity to be evaluated and to improve. And that's exactly what a table topics evaluation does. When I was in the top 3, I promoted, for every club I started, I promoted table topics evaluations. Some of them were reluctant, some in Northern Indiana, some in Southern Indiana. If you try it, you find that it really works. Now, I'm in a couple of clubs in Division E, and we do not evaluate table topics, which is difficult for me. However, at least in one of the clubs that I tried to incorporate table topics evaluations, it was kind of shut down immediately. And that is sad to me. The other club, I have not tried promoting it. However, the club in Bloomington that I started, they also do table topics evaluations.
All right.
So it's good. I love it.
Yes. How are we going to improve unless we're evaluated? Anybody else have any comments they would like to make about that?
Well, I don't have anything against it, but I would just say that usually, to be frank, table topics is used to give people in our club who aren't featured speakers that night a chance to talk and a chance to participate. And the only problem you have is we also offer it to guests, and I'll shut up here in 10 seconds. And we don't want to offend a guest who's terrified anyway, or maybe. So my question to you, Alan, and I respect you immensely, is do you take any caution as to who does the evaluation, or do different members of the club evaluate different speakers? What's the logistics?
All right. Thank you, Bob. Like all roles in a club, to be an evaluator for table topics is something that you volunteer and sign up for. We do try to teach our experienced speakers and evaluators different ways to evaluate and be a lot more gentle on the newer people, especially visitors. But can be also, if you think about this can be the role of the general evaluator. The general evaluator is to evaluate all the evaluators and can make comments about the table topics evaluator. I think it was Diane Mayer had a comment. You're on mute, Diane.
Sorry about that. Yeah, we definitely evaluate. I put it in chat. We often have 2 table topics evaluators when we have extended periods and evaluate the odds and evens. We like it because it gives another role. It opens up 2 more roles, and we're struggling a little bit now with attendance, but traditionally we have 15 or more people attending a meeting, and we want everybody to have a role, and it does that. As for new members or guests, our first priority is for the Table Topics Master to call on people who don't have a scheduled role, so they have an opportunity to speak. And once all of those people have been exhausted, then we will ask a guest if they feel comfortable in participating. Most of the time they will, occasionally they won't, and then we move on. And the evaluator is always easy and encouraging to a guest or a new member, always.
Okay, Diane brought up a very, very strong, valid point. The Table Topics Master should be calling on those people in the meeting that don't have assigned roles. And that way, everybody at every meeting has a chance to speak and be heard. Do we have any other comments on this before we move on to something else?
Yep.
LaDonna, I see.
Rob.
Rob, okay.
Yeah, for our table topics, evaluations have always been part of that, but we actually do round robin evaluations. So the person that speaks, they will evaluate the next person. We think that evaluations are a key part of it, and keeping them short, it's a good practice, because oftentimes people in doing evaluations, that's when they do a lot of the filler words and things like that. And we recognize right off the bat that it's going to be a bit of a challenge, but we find that the round robin is a very effective way for people to work on their evaluation methods, as well as obviously the table topics experience as well. We make sure everyone has a chance to participate. Our general evaluator does the first table topics speech evaluation, and then we just go then follow suit. But we found that very effective, as long as we let people know at the start that's that. And with new members on board, as you have said, or new guests, is the same courtesy that if they'd like to participate, but we hope to give them a flavor for, we want them to feel like they came away with something from the meeting, and that being a feedback too on things that they could work on. They hear other people getting feedback and they say, well, that might be good for me as well.
Okay, thank you, Rob. One thing I want people to take away from what Rob just said, there's more than one way to run a Toastmasters meeting. There's no exact way that you have to do a Toastmasters meeting. Every club's a little bit different. I know we have other people. I see Meg has her hand up. and
Miss
I had asked
LaDonna.
somebody else. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, Miss LaDonna had her hand.
Thank you, Mark. I was just going to add, for our club, we're GE Appliances out of Louisville. We are still doing all of ours remote. We're not back in the office there. We are adding new members, but we still can't seem to get past, say, 6 people in attendance. So I see has grown since we've been doing the remote. Everybody at the meeting answers a table topic. Our table topic master, whoever it is, we are giving the feedback after each table topic, describing, reiterating what they said, complimenting them on being able to respond and liking their things. And then of course our grammarian, the grammarian and all counter, they do their report, they'll report on the speech, and then they'll report on each person's table topic. So we kind of have to mix it up a bit to cover the fact we have so few people to take roles. But I am happy to say we've been adding new members. So I'm hoping when we return to the office in March, then people will start coming to the meetings. But I like the idea of evaluating the table topics.
Okay, I'm gonna make a quick comment here. I would like everybody that is speaking tonight, try to keep your comments down to about 30 seconds so we can get everybody involved and we can cover a lot of material. I believe, Meg, you were next.
Mm-hmm.
The reason that I think table topics evaluations are so important is for anyone who's in business or in any kind of leadership role or want to be in a leadership role. So we can evaluate how a person is gathering their thoughts, addressing the issue. So therefore, when their vice president says, hey, tell us about your project, they have gotten the evaluation from doing table topics in our meeting and are able to really make a good impression. So that's why we evaluate them.
All right, Scott?
I'm wondering, for those clubs that don't normally evaluate table topics, if you do a meeting that is all table topics, do you then evaluate the table topics if it's only a table topic meeting, or do you still not evaluate?
That's a good question. Wonder how they do that. Hope everybody's taking notes on this. Remember, we're talking tonight about what a visitor or a new member is experiencing. And as you can see, there's a lot of different ways to do meetings. So let's move on from table topics. Let's talk about just the meeting as a whole. Do you sit with the person at the meeting? Do you whisper in their ear, or do you talk out loud, which I think is quite rude to do at a meeting, because the person at the lectern is supposed to have control of the room. My preferred method is to pass them a written note. I'd like to know how you, when you sit next to a visitor, they have questions, how do you communicate with them? Anybody? If you don't speak up, I will call on people.
Well, we, in our clubs that I've been a member of, we usually kind of preview, as everybody does, what each role will be. So that helps clarify what they're seeing. We hand them a copy of an agenda if we're in a live setting, or we post it online, because we're doing both. And then we always say at the end, if you have a question about anything that went on, feel free to ask, at an opportune time at the end of a speech or whatever. And then at the end, we want their feedback. At the end, we say, so what did you think of the experience? Was there anything we did that drove you crazy or didn't make sense? And that's pretty much how we limit it, so that we're not talking during the meeting.
So I just want to throw a question out to everybody. Do you have a sheet that you can give or email or send to a visitor or new member that explains what all the different roles are?
We have a packet that we give to new members. So it's a folder that has an agenda, it has a description of all the roles, has some information about pathways, has information about our club. So I make sure that every visitor has that packet before they begin the meeting, and I make sure the agenda is in front. They can see then how the meeting's going to go. And then afterwards, we usually have a discussion about their questions.
Okay, who's next, Mark?
Miss Annabelle.
Hello, everybody. In our club, we basically email the roles on before every meeting. We don't have like reoccurrence or freshly people coming to the club. It's more like a yearly thing that we get new members. So we don't get that fresh blood in every meeting. But just by listening to you guys, probably we need to change that approach and keep growing, in a regular basis, the membership. Definitely it's a good idea to have. In the past, it has been like just once a year when we, do the draw for the club. Because it's like a simmer only kind of thing, but definitely we definitely will evaluate and change that. I like the idea of having new members, regularly in the meeting. Right now we're limited, like a lot of people, just to get people participating on the table topic is a challenge, or getting speakers as well. I guess by having new members will definitely improve that, because they're more eager, to participate.
Okay, thank you, Annabelle. Anybody else, Mark? All right.
Nope, that's it.
Okay. When you first sit with a visitor that's coming to your club, what do you ask them? What's the first question you ask them? I know what I ask them, I'd like to hear
Why
what
do you-
everybody else asks.
Why do you want to join Toastmasters? What drew you here?
My question is basically the same. Why are you here? And then just practice your listening skills, because that's what's important. They're there for a reason. They didn't stumble into this thinking it was an AA meeting. They came for a reason. They're there to find out what Toastmasters is all about. And they already usually know a little bit about it. But you need to be prepared to answer their questions, especially about our programs, especially about pathways and all the other different programs that we have. Anybody else? What do you say to that visitor that comes to your club?
Alan, I always lead with, is this your first Toastmasters meeting?
That's a good one. Very good.
I have a better idea if there's a frame of reference they have yet or not.
Mhm. See, Nyla has her hand up.
And yeah, Nyla and then Kevin after Nyla. So Nyla?
We always ask them, how did you hear about our club? And then go into why are you here? How did you hear about our group?
Ah, that's really good, Nyla. We're going to get into that a lot more. So, okay, who's next, Mark?
That'd be Mr. Kevin out of Columbus.
Oh, thank you. My name is Kevin Burba, and when you have a new guest that is totally new to the group, I view this from the past when I was a new member back then, that they first of all, the Sergeant at Arms greets the guest, and then when the meeting commences, the president asks, do we have any new members or guests? And the guest, back then before pre-COVID, would have their tag and their name underneath this guest, and the person would explain who they are and how they hear about Toastmasters. And with that in mind, it brings the presence in mind of the positivity for the guest to feel welcome in the group, because each of the groups within the whole corporate clubs are different, but it depends on how the person feels comfortable expressing themselves to a group that's supporting them in a non-judgment-free zone.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Anybody else, Mark?
Miss Cara, I think.
Oh,
Not very good with Zoom, but I'm getting there. I had something earlier. I think the biggest thing with whenever we have guests, I just noticed there's always a lot of confusion about what's really going on in the group, you know, in the meeting. And whenever I'm the Toastmaster, whenever we have a guest, I make sure each step along the way to say, okay, you know, now we have, here are our ballots. It's not rude. Please rip these apart during the meeting. And, you know, try to explain the, just each part of the meeting and what everyone's doing. And I think it really helps a lot, because to someone who's brand new to Toastmasters, it's incredibly overwhelming.
mhm. Thank you.
I have Miss
Next, Mark.
Becky. I have Miss Becky, and then I have Mr. Rob. Becky?
In our club, we actually have our president welcome our guests, and they make sure that they know the structure of the meeting and when they're invited to speak, which for our club is table topics. Our guests are invited to participate in that. So our president always makes sure at the beginning of the meeting, when the guests introduce themselves, that they know that that's something that they can participate in. And then our table topics master also reiterates that. And then at the end of the meeting, we always ask what the impression was of the guest. So now that you've seen a meeting, what's your impression of it, and what kind of feedback do you have for us?
All right, thank you, Becky. Who's next, Mark?
And Rob is next.
Okay.
Thank you, Mark. Well, I like to frame it differently when we ask a guest about them being there, is what they hope to learn by being there today. And that allows us then at the end to ask them or us to check to see, did they get what they wanted in coming to the meeting? Oftentimes, I remember in corporate environments, that's oftentimes at the beginning of meetings, people share their expectations and it's a checklist at the end to make sure it's gotten covered. And that's just a good way to, we give them a heads up when we might ask them to speak, including their own introduction, so they can know when to anticipate that. So they're not uneased about the fact they got to wait to when they might have a chance to speak. And then we do the tabletops and give them that chance. But we like to ask them what they hope to learn, and then we can follow up on that. And that between the president, I like the suggestion the president welcoming them, or at least the Toastmaster is responsible for the meeting, is make sure that happens as well.
Okay, was there anybody else, Mark?
No, that's it.
All right, I want to go back to something Nyla said. She brought up a really good point. This is a chance for us, experienced Toastmasters, to learn from our guests. How did you hear about us? And so my big question to everybody is what does your club website look like? Is it up to date? When's the last time you went and looked at your club website, went all the way through it to see how up to date things are or how out of date things are? How many here have Free Toast as your club website? I see a lot of hands going up, but I see a few that don't go up. So those of you that don't have your hands up, you're not using Free Toast. What are you using as a website? Because Toastmasters International does a lot of surveys. And I know this from being on the board of directors. We found that more than 90% of our guests are coming from the internet. They're simply typing in Toastmasters, and then they will type in whatever range miles of clubs they're looking for. And then they can click on the club's websites and look at them. So if you're not using Free Toast, what are you using? And this is open for those that are not using Free Toast.
Christopher?
Yeah, this is Chris Fleming. I am in a closed corporate club at Humana in Louisville. Mm-hmm. So we made a decision not to use a Free Toast. What we wanted to do was tap into the intercompany websites that are being built, because knowing it's a closed club, they're going to be pushed to all those type of websites. So we got something called SharePoint. We built a whole SharePoint. It has a Go link. We call it Go/Toast. So any Humana employee can just go hit that Go link because they're in the intraweb, and then it's like a website. It's just like any other website. It's up to date, links, all that, how to sign up, things like that. But we decided to do that just because since we're a closed club, we want to get the traffic the best way we can inside the company.
Hey, Christopher, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Because you are in a closed club, in a corporate club, when you have new hires there at Humana, are they introduced to Toastmasters by human resources? Are they told that they have something like this, or is this something your club can talk to HR and have them start to introduce to the new hires?
Well, that was always a struggle at first, but what we ended up doing was getting on a list of they're called Go sites. We got on the list, so every new person, they get this whole list. One of the links is Toastmasters, and we also have kind of like a Twitter type of setup at our company called Yammer, and we're always posting stuff to there trying to get traffic.
Okay.
So, I mean, between those two things, we think that we're going to get in front of people at some point.
All right. Thank you. Who's next, Mark?
That would be Miss LaDonna.
Thank you, Mark. Similar to Christopher, our club is a corporate club. We are on the SharePoint Drive, which he also uses. We also have Yammer. I have also, as president, have reached out to Neon, which is our new employee orientation group. So we have a table set up there for the new employee orientation meetings, so they can come and get information about Toastmasters and little flyers and things for Toastmasters. So we use 3 to reach out to our employees, but we also get a lot of people outside the company wanting to join, and they find us on Toastmasters website.
Okay, anybody else, Mark?
No, but I will add, so from my company, we were always part of the new employee orientation. And then what we discovered is it kind of dropped out last year. And so we have revisited. So we are now one of the feature pages in new hire orientation when they finally get it going again, which is a good thing.
Okay, let's get back to our basics here. We're a visitor that's walked into a Toastmasters club. We've met a few people. The meeting started. We're getting some explanation of what the different roles are. The meeting's going on. What would we like to get from our visitors that we're not getting from our visitors? Usually they are very shy. They may not want to participate in table topics, and that's okay if they don't want to. But what would we like to get more from our visitors that we're not getting from them? How can we maybe improve our club more?
Mr. Joseph has his hand. Hey, good evening, Joe.
You're on mute, Joe.
Good evening. One of the things, Alan, I believe we should be trying to ascertain from those individuals is their true interest in joining a Toastmasters club. It doesn't have to be our club. It could be any Toastmasters club, but to answer as many questions as possible about Toastmasters, and then also to have a membership application or kit available for them to carry with them when they leave the meeting.
In other words, close the sale. Who's next, Mark?
Mr. Scott.
Okay.
One of the questions that we've asked for years in clubs outside of Indiana is, what can you give to Toastmasters and what do you want to get from Toastmasters? So there's an equal relationship as opposed to just being one-sided, where they're either just taking from us or just giving to us, but there's more reciprocity within the relationship. And the clubs that I've been in that have done that, it has always led to longer conversation and a higher sell-through rate.
Okay, all right.
And Mr. Bob Glenn.
Yeah, I think one of the newest things we want to find out is do they prefer live meetings, or is Pathways and the online alternative, is that what it drew them to us? I think when this first started with the pandemic, we went to online out of necessity, but now with this next generation, if you're going to attract younger members, you would like to think that digital communication would be a plus, but I would say I'm not sure that it is, because I haven't seen droves of millennials and Gen Xers breaking our door down to join Toastmasters. And I'm not condemning them. I'm not trying to be stereotypic. I know we have folks of that age here and I'm a dinosaur, but the big issue is I think they work all day. Here's my theory. They work all day with this stuff. They're sick of it. So when you say, oh, we have an online this, they're like, oh, great, another online application that I have to wrestle with. So I'd be interested to hear the responses from you, Alan, or anybody else as to what we do with that, because I'm not sure. We may think it's a plus. It may actually be a minus.
Good point, Bob. I can only speak right now for my home club. The fact that the last several people that have come to the meetings and have joined have joined because we are having face-to-face meetings. However, our club actually has blended meetings. We've been doing blended meetings now for almost a year and a half, and we actually have it down pretty good, because you would need to come to our meeting and see how we're set up, because those that join us online are projected onto a screen up front at a slight angle to the speaker at the lectern. And we have several laptops at the meeting with cameras so the people online can see who is live in attendance. One of the things we do is when we call on somebody to speak that is online, because many times your applause will walk on what they're trying to say. So if we call on somebody that's online, we do a single clap. That's it. That's the people that's live. Whereas people that are live in attendance, if we call on them, we applaud as normal. But we do a single clap for the people online because they start speaking right away, they evidently cannot hear the applause. Let's see, I think Diane has a comment to make, and then I'm going to move on to something else.
I thought the original comment had to do with pathways versus the old paper-based system. And my comment overall is that young people, in my experience, think that anyone who is not online is dinosaurs. So I do believe for sure there is Zoom fatigue, no question about that. But that's not the same as saying that an online learning management system, which is what Pathways is, that's absolutely what any millennial or pretty much any professional person these days would expect.
All right. I have a couple more things that I want to bring up. However, I am open to all of you for anything that you want to talk about. But would you like to avoid some problems that your club has in the future, especially attendance, participation, and things like that? Many years back, one of our presidents in Toastmasters, and they kind of all run together for me because I know all of them. One of the big things that they wanted to talk about is that when you are signing up a new member, is that you specifically go over word for word the Toastmaster promise that's on a membership application, and let them know what the expectations is of the club from them. You can avoid a lot of problems in the future, especially when it comes to participation, if you spend time going over the Toastmasters promise. It's probably been a long time since many of us have read over the Toastmaster promise and realized what really is expected of each and every Toastmaster. So I would encourage all of you to do that, especially when you are signing up new members. And it wouldn't hurt for you to read over it again and become very familiar with it. And another thing I wanted to talk to you about was how many here allow people to come to their club under the age of 18? We've had many people come to our club under the age of 18. Now, they can't join, they can't work in Pathways, but they can work in the Old Competent Communicator Manual, and they can learn a lot from the Old Competent Communicator Manual. And ironically, we've had several of our members working in Pathways want to go back to the Competent Communicator Manual, but since Pathways has been revised, especially level 1, it has addressed some of those problems. However, these people that are in high school and want to participate in Toastmasters, they get very involved and we can learn a lot from them. And I would encourage you to allow participation and allow them to attend your meetings because they can learn a lot. And some of our newer members also want to bring their children to Toastmasters because a babysitter is quite expensive. I have no problem with that because the children that come there, even ones as young as 8 years old that we've had at meetings, will sit there very quietly and very attentive. Sometimes they look like they're bored, not paying attention. until they get ready to give a presentation in front of us. And then we're shocked at how much they are actually learning and doing. And usually they're doing much better than some of the newer Toastmasters that have been working at it, because these kids really pick this stuff up fast and they learn a lot. So remember, we're setting examples for them. Let's move on to, again, tonight we're talking about the new member experience or the visitor's experience. Just a general question is, what kind of questions or problems do you hear from the visitors or new members coming to your club? What do they not understand, or what do they feel like they're missing? That's an open question for anybody.
Joseph.
You're on mute, Joe.
Yes, one of the big things that I've heard from individuals who have visited our club is, I'm amazed you can get something done in 1 hour. As far as following an agenda, staying on point, that's the biggest comment I've received.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I do hope that everybody here has printed agendas at their meetings. That's very important. All right, now I see more hands up.
Let's go to Rick and then we'll come to Scott, if that's okay.
Thanks. One problem that we have, we meet at a university, and our meetings start at 4:30 in the afternoon. And it's generally undergrads that join that may have class until 4:45 or 5 o'clock. And that really is our biggest problem with newcomers right now, getting undergrads to be part of Toastmasters, even though they can't be at the first part of the meeting.
Okay, Rick, do you ever think about changing around the meeting format? In other words, a lot of clubs will start with, we're going to open the meeting, we'll do our prepared speeches, we'll do evaluations, we'll do table topics. There's no right way and wrong way to do a meeting. You can mix the meeting up. If your club has any kind of business meeting, perhaps you want to do that first and not actually start the Toastmasters meeting until the undergrads or grad students, whatever the case may be, is there in attendance.
That's true. That is something we can do.
Yeah.
And we just had somebody join, and I suggested that they could participate easily in table topics, because that's generally near the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Zoom obviously is an option for us, and I encourage anybody that, they can sit in the hallway right outside their classroom and they can join via Zoom if they have a laptop and can do that.
Yeah. All right, who's next, Mark?
That'll be Scott and then Daniel after that.
One of the things that I hear consistently from clubs that have higher retention rates and higher conversion rates are that members see a connection between what Toastmasters does and something that they can immediately apply outside of Toastmasters. So it's something that they can take with them and use within their job or within their community. Whereas the clubs that don't have that tie, that it's more of a fun event, tend to not be able to convert as much. So when you can tie that together to something that you can use today, members tend to enjoy that more and find a greater benefit from it.
Okay.
Daniel?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that our club is relatively small, so we have this flexibility. But since we're based at Purdue University, we end up changing our meeting day almost every semester. So we'll always meet at noon, but one semester we might meet on a Tuesday, and then we find out that 1 or 2 people can't do Tuesday because of their schedule the next semester. And so we'll do a club vote and find out if there's a day everyone can meet. And we haven't had a problem yet finding another weekday. So we end up switching to a Wednesday or something. And it ends up working for the person who had the conflict. And thankfully, the rest of us are flexible enough that basically any lunch day works. So I would just suggest, if it's possible, even considering starting a little bit later, so that people who don't have that option, can join, or maybe just try it for a semester and see if that helps or not. Or maybe you lose people because it goes on too late.
All right, thank you, Daniel.
Ms. Rakia. Good evening, Ms. Rakia.
I would like to add, there's a lot of things that I'm getting out of this. One of the things, Alan, you said about listening to their purpose. One of the things we do, we try to listen. A lot of people may come to Toastmasters to brush up on their interview skills. So we will have table topics centered around brushing up your asking interview questions and things like that. The one thing that we did in our club, because we were shocked this year, we've gotten a good 6 new members. And I had just a Zoom night. I took a night and said, hey, any other new members, you want to learn something, let's get on a Zoom. And we just took an hour and I answered any questions that they had. The technology to allow you to share your screen. I showed them how to navigate the free Toast, our club website, as well as the TI website. And it really seemed to be very, very helpful. We actually recorded it, and I was surprised. We had 4 of the 6 members show up, and it was a very good session.
All right. Do we have anybody else, Mark?
We don't, but Alan, I have a question, if I may,
Sure.
for you. And you mentioned this, you alluded to this about closing the sale. So, we've had many questions around how many times should a visitor come to a club before you not pressurize them, but before you up the sale? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I really think this is just my opinion. I think it's up to the individual. I try to listen to what they have to say, what they are getting out of it, how often they're coming. So if they're coming to a meeting every week, a lot of times they don't want to say so, but it's a financial thing. They don't have the money quite to join. And I can sense this sometimes. So I will encourage them just to continue to come and participate and join when they're ready, because I think we already have them if they're coming every week. And they understand that their participation, they're not working in pathways. And that's one of the things I do stress to them, is that I cannot get you involved in pathways until you become an actual member, but we can let you participate in meetings and get to know the people and let them start to feel more comfortable. Because again, I think it's an individual thing. Some people want to feel comfortable with the group before they join the group. Anybody else? Any comments? I did have a friend in Florida. He visited a Toastmasters club. He visited a second time, and their VP of Ed told him he was not allowed to come anymore unless he joined that night. I made sure the right people talked to that VP of Ed and straightened him out, because there's nothing in the bylaws of Toastmasters that says we can place any limits on how often a visitor comes.
Good, thank you. Scott.
District 84 actually did a study on this a couple of years ago, and they found that clubs that ask members to not join until the 3rd meeting have a 90-day retention rate, almost twice that as clubs that allow people to join on the 1st day. The reason they found is that those that join on the 1st day are so excited that they found something new, then they realize it doesn't fit within their schedule. So by that 3rd time, they realize when they can come, if the club fits within their schedule, and if it can't, that club helps place them in another club that does fit within their schedule. So that 3 visits, there is something to that. There's nothing that's saying that you have to do that, but there is some empirical data for that.
Okay.
Cool.
Anybody else?
Miss Becky.
One of the things that our club has found is that we've gotten people that have visited more than one club in the area and have ended up joining our club because we seem friendly. And I know that sometimes people will come and visit and won't join just because it's not necessarily a good personality fit. So it might not be your club or your meeting times or anything else. It might just be that people aren't vibing with your particular group. And if that's the case, you probably don't want them as part of your group anyway. They're probably better off with a different group.
Okay. I see we got about, I believe, 9 minutes left. Is that correct, Mark? So
That's
I'm going
correct.
to throw something out here. I want to know how many of you have attended a meeting totally unannounced, just walked in as a guest, and put yourself in the shoes of a guest or a new member. I'll just tell a quick story. When I was international director, I attended a club in Florida, sit through the entire meeting. They never asked me my name, why I was there. Nobody asked me anything. There was one member in the club that knew me, and I made sure that she did not identify me. After the meeting, as I'm walking out, the president asked me, "Oh, who are you?" And when I told him, his jaw hit the ground. He was shocked. So I would challenge all of you, put yourself in the shoes of the guest or the new member. Go attend another Toastmasters club that's having live meetings. And don't announce yourself, just go in. Don't wear a name tag, don't wear a Toastmaster pin, don't wear a Toastmaster shirt, like I know you can't really there. Now you can see what I have on. But instead, go there as a guest and see how they treat their guests and what you could learn putting yourself in the shoes of a guest or a new member. Now, if anybody else has done this, I would like to hear about your experiences right now. Now, I know there's some people online. I don't necessarily want to call on them that I know have attended clubs unannounced.
I see Mr. Bob has his hand up.
Probably about 8 years ago, we had a gentleman from India come over a couple of summers in a row. His son lived in Owensboro, and he was coming to our club. And I said, you really need to have an experience and go over to one of the Evansville clubs. You know, they're bigger, they're different, you know. So we went over and I tried to get a hold of the guy who was chair of the club. It's the one that's in the Carousel restaurant. God knows if they still even exist with COVID. And so we walked in totally unannounced. And we got there, we got trapped in 5 o'clock rush hour traffic, and we get in there and we walk in and sit down, and we're about to be correct. They did a good job. About 10 or 15 minutes in, somebody finally came over and asked us what we were doing there, who we were, you know. But it was interesting because we didn't have any time to say a word. And they were already in the middle of eating and doing socializing. That club eats and then has a meeting. So I think it took about 10 minutes, but I mean, they were very good and they treated us like royalty once they interrogated us and found out what we were doing there.
Okay, who else has attended a meeting unannounced and the people didn't know who you were when you got there?
Kyoto.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Hello.
I cannot find the handout mark on my computer. So thank you for finding me, Mark.
You're
And,
welcome.
I participate the joint meeting, Indiana and China. And I participate in a Japanese club meeting. And I realized how our club, our original club, is wonderful. And also other club is a good point. And when I participate the China and Indiana's meeting, the general evaluator was great. They evaluate everyone. So I was surprised and I impressed that style. And another meeting, everybody asked me who you are and why you joined this meeting, and everybody welcomed me. And after the meeting, they always send me an email. So that's so impressive things, and I have to learn, and I will do same things I learned a lot from other clubs. Thank you.
Hey, Kyoko brings up a really good point. You have a visitor visit your club, follow up with them. Thank them for coming to your club. Send them a thank you note, a thank you email, something to let them know that you do appreciate them coming and you're available if they have any questions. Anybody else attend a club where they did not know who you were?
Mr. Walton, who attended 7,656 clubs last year. Good evening, sir.
Fellow Toastmasters, I'll tell you a very brief story. Several years ago, I attended a local club, which in its day was a strong, very strong club with lots of powerful members. I walked in unannounced, and I was nobody to have an announcement anyway. But I sat through the entire meeting. Nobody said a word to me. I was not invited to say a word. And after the meeting, I walked out. I might as well not have brought my mouth. That was a learning experience for me.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. Well, I have a saying, good meetings end on time, great meetings end early. So I'm going to call an end to this and give this back to our moderator, Mark Mandel.
Thank you, Alan. What a fantastic session this evening. If you do have more questions, then feel free to email me, and I'm happy to forward those on to Alan. Copy of this recording, of course, will be made available on the district website. Unfortunately, during the meeting, I managed to break the feedback form somehow, so I will make sure that I send the feedback form out to everybody tomorrow, or as soon as Patty gets it fixed and back to me. We have one more evening set up for tomorrow evening, and it answers the age-old question: what can you do to help the district, and what do district leaders do anyway? And that's tomorrow evening at 7:30 on exactly the same link. For those of you in corporate clubs or just love to spend time with us during the week, don't forget the next Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, we will have 3 sessions at noon Eastern time that will help our corporate club officers and everybody that just wants to hang around, and we'll be talking about some of the things that we learned this week. Other than that, thank you so much. If you haven't gone online to the chat box and told me who you are, what club you're with, and what officer roles, I would challenge you to do that. And it just leaves me one more time, if I could ask everybody to unmute and please thank our amazing speaker for this evening, the venerable Mr. Alan Shannon.
Alan.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Alan.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great meeting.
Thank you. And with that, I will bid you all a fond farewell for the evening. I'm going to stop